Well, there have been aftershocks in Queensland, make no mistake. As Jim wrote to me today, the one lesson the LNP in Queensland and political parties everywhere should draw from Saturday's humiliating drubbing is that you can't just run a smiling and pleasant political cardboard cutout from central casting as leader, unable to articulate a competing vision or capitalise on incompetence, who thinks they just have to turn up on the day and expect to win. It's not a winning strategy. Ditto, he says, Victoria's Liberal opposition. Well, Stephen Wardell, in the Brisbane Courier Mail today, sums it up splendidly. He says, quote, as the LNP sets about pulping the signs of another generation of failed candidates and picking another leader, the party's remaining MPs have been trotting out familiar excuses, unquote. But as Stephen Wardell says, if these MPs really want to know why they've been trounced again and why they'll spend the next 4 years in wallowing in opposition, they all, with a few exceptions, need only to look in the mirror for the answer. He writes, from front bench to back bench, the LNP is beset by a bunch of lazy, incompetent and irrelevant members who are clueless about the hard work required to beat Labor at a Queensland election. What is left of the LNP, he says, is a modest army of mostly greying old men in greying old suits, a group so homogenous that it's difficult to distinguish one from the other. Steve Wardell uses the word clueless. Listen to what Campbell Newman told me last night, which proves how clueless this mob are from the top down.
I don't know why, Alan, but a little bird told me in the last 24 hours that the party room may have been misled by the leadership team, that they were told, I'm told that the party room were told that they were going to win 13 seats, that the polling said that. Maybe explains why all those LNP MPs just thought they somehow were going to walk into office.
Well, that's correct. I had a senior figure in the Queensland Liberal Party having a bit of a shot at me, very senior, who told me only 3 weeks ago, Alan, you're wrong, we'll win 13 seats. What do they say in the castle? Tell him he's dreaming. Steve Wardell refers to, quote, layabout bench warmers in safe seats who aren't willing to get off their rear ends. He writes, the fundamental difference between Labor and the LNP couldn't be more stark. One side's packed full of hard-working people who wake every day willing to do what it takes to win the next election. The other side just arrogantly assumes Queenslanders will come to their senses and their only effort is to raise their hand every so often to chop and change the leader. Steve Wardell ends appropriately, what a bunch of losers. Well, that prompted this comment from Campbell Newman last night.
Sadly, within the LNP party room, there are people who are seat warmers.
Right.
They need to have a long, hard look at themselves.
Absolutely.
And actually, they should make way for new talent, new blood. It's time for generational change.
Well, might I amusingly point out that on the Friday of last week, the day before the election, the Courier Mail advocated a vote for change, quote, for a more disciplined approach to how taxpayer money is managed, for fresh ideas and a proper understanding of the importance of our regions. What Queensland needs now is change, a better grasp of the importance of regional jobs towards our shared prosperity. Even the Courier Mail, I think, has seen the light because Stephen Wardell is right, and I've argued it for months. This mob weren't ready for government or worthy of government. As he said, from front bench to back bench, the LNP is beset by a bunch of lazy, incompetent and irrelevant members who are clueless about the hard work required to beat Labor at a Queensland election. He refers to layabout bench warmers. Well, consider this. Tim Nicholls is a former leader. He's been in the blue ribbon seat of Clayfield since 2006. He fell over the line on Saturday, but couldn't command 50% of the vote. He's been there 14 years. The bulk of the electorate don't want him. Coomera on the Gold Coast corridor. You've never heard of Michael Crandon. He's 66. He's been there since 2009. He also fell over the line, but he only got 40% of the primary vote. Labor got a swing of 5.3%. These are the seat warmers. Glasshouse on the Sunshine Coast hinterland, Andrew Powell. He's only 47, but he could only command 40.5% of the vote. He's been there 11 years. What about Fiona Simpson in Maroochydore? She's been there since 1992. That's nearly 30 years. You've never heard of her. She's 55, a seat warmer. I mean, if you haven't done anything by now, you most probably never will. Mermaid Beach, Gold Coast. Ray Stevens, he's 67 years of age. He's been there since 2006. He had another swing against him, 43% of the vote. Michael Hart will most probably hang on to the seat of Burleigh, but he's had a 10% swing against him, a 40% primary vote. Why are these seat warmers staying? Well, These are some of the Brussels sprouts of Liberal politics. The things that appear on the Christmas dinner table when they're the last thing you want to see. Why do they hang around? Well, my friends, you're to blame. You're the paymaster. They're on a base salary of $159,000. There are 11 committees in the Parliament, so most of them are on one. You get $24,000 extra for being on that. If you chair one of the committees, you get another $60,000. Are you adding up? Plus a $6,000 tax-free allowance, we're already well over $200,000. If you're a party leader, you get another $60,000. But if you're an opposition shadow minister, one of these Brussels sprouts, or what Steve Waddell called lazy, incompetent and irrelevant members who are clueless, someone has to be a shadow minister. That's another $60,000. We're well over $200,000. If you're manager of opposition business, you get another $84,000. Tim Mander, thank God, is not standing for leader. He refereed 2 rugby league grand finals and he was the CEO of the Scripture Union of Queensland. But he's been the deputy opposition leader. Base salary, $159,000 and a bit. And on a loading for deputy leader, $96,000 extra, plus an allowance, which is not taxed. Again, Campbell Newman last night nailed it in relation to Tim Mander, who, put bluntly, could never be a leader. This is Campbell Newman.
He was meant to deliver an economic narrative that actually was superior to Labor's narrative about the way the economy should be revitalised, but also how they'd manage the state's finances. The policy funding costings were released only scant hours before the election. And when we saw them, and you just alluded to this, essentially the big, bold plan was just studies. But meantime, we were handing out a cash splash, $300 per registered vehicle across Queensland. It didn't make sense.
Well, look, none of it makes sense. The Leader of the Opposition, no wonder she wanted to stay on. Base salary $159,000, an untaxed allowance of $11,000, and for being leader, another $145,000. And most of these people never heard of. They couldn't write a policy document if you did it for them, and then they wouldn't understand it. And that's why we heard nothing by way of policy except police rounding up vagrant children in Townsville, the political version of dog catchers, and as Campbell said, a $300 car registration rebate for every car owner. Clive Palmer's got $150, so just chuck $45,000 at him. David Crisafulli will be the new leader, the member for Broadwater on the northern Gold Coast. A primary vote of 59.7%, a swing to him of 11.2%. He's 41 years of age. He's been a minister. He was born in Ingham. He has a degree in journalism from James Cook University. He's worked in the media. He was chief of staff of the Townsville newsroom of Win News. But he's got a massive job in front of him. The head office has to be cleaned out. I've said this for months and months. There were no surprises on Saturday night, but a 5% swing to Labor across the state. You're kidding me. A Labor government with more convictions than Ned Kelly. But how do you get rid of the Brussels sprouts when they're on over $200,000 a year, which they could never earn in the world outside the Parliament? A new executive with ideas and proven clout in the community, a new young leader with energy, commitment and policy substance simply has to do what any coach or leader has to do if you want a successful team. Sorry, Bill, Fred and Mary, I've got to take you off the paddock. I need people who play the game differently. In politics, as in life, if you do what you did last week, you'll get last week's result. It's a grim picture. The LNP in Queensland are worthy losers. But you need to remember one thing. In a contest where there are only a couple of starters, you can win if you go about it the right way. But remember, success usually comes to those who are too busy to be looking for it. The only thing you get without hard work is failure. What do you think? Alan at skynews.com.au and the text line 0414 000 848.